seniority with the citizens of Pontiac. What is something that made you smile?
I bought a coffee table at the Habitat for Humanity restore for $35. It was half off and really nice.
The Waterford location? Attorney Gurley, what's been a highlight of your day today? Amen. Deputy Mayor?
I was gonna say that. No, it's just
Amen. Dr. Waterman, what's been the highlight of your day today?
so many.
There is a time limit. Amen. Amen on both fronts. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The time is Good afternoon. The time is 5:13 p.m. This special meeting of the City Council is hereby called to order. Before we had quorum, we were just doing an informal icebreaker celebrating a highlight of the day today. And now that we're through that, next up, for the sake of time, we'll forego the pledge and the invocation and a moment of silence, but roll call, Clerk Doyle.
Carrington. Present. Goodman.
Here.
James. McGinnis.
Present.
Nicholson. Parker. Rutherford.
Present.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Quorum being established, is there a motion to excuse councilpersons James and Nicholson for personal reasons?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Councilman Goodman, and Councilman Parker is expected to join shortly. He's got the great honor of helping be a part of the investiture of a new judge that's being sworn in today, Judge Adrian Young. And so after he's concluded with that ceremony, he'll be joining us shortly, so we won't be excusing him. Hearing no further discussion on the motion to excuse council members James and Nicholson for personal reasons, roll call, Clerk Doyle.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
4 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The council members are excused. Is there a motion to approve this afternoon's agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Pro Tem Carrington on the motion to approve the agenda. Any discussion or amendments? As the afternoon goes on, we may make some decisions on the fly about pivoting to different departments for order and chronology, but for right now, here's as good a place as any to start. So with that, roll call, Clerk Doyle, on approval of this afternoon's agenda.
Goodman.
Yes.
James. McGinnis.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
4 yeas, no nays.
All right. 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yes, that motion carries. All right, so we're continuing the review of the annual proposed budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025. Previous special meeting reviewing the budget has already taken place. In addition to research and review that council members have done, the mayor and his administration did submit on time per the charter requirement by May 1st this proposed budget. So the city council is doing its due diligence to review the requests and proposals in this evening. But next Tuesday, we have a public hearing for both this proposed budget and for the proposed millage rates for the fiscal year. That's the community's opportunity to, at a specific time carved out on the agenda in a public meeting, to hold a hearing where they can express their ideas, requests, questions as it relates to the proposal and the proposed millage rate. So that's this coming Tuesday, May 21st, same time and location as every other regular city council meeting. And then following that, on Thursday, May 23rd, will be our final special meeting on the budget. The budget will continue to be reviewed, amended, honed prior to ultimate consideration and adoption by the city council at the subsequent city council meetings, and it will be adopted prior to the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. We'll do it in advance of that final day, though, since the state has a requirement of additional buffer of time. But just want to give everyone that frame of reference. We'll be finalizing the budget prior to the new fiscal year starting July 1st of 2024. Any broad level questions before we start going department by department once more, as has been started at last week's special meeting? Okay. Broader process questions are certainly allowed throughout It doesn't have to be limited to just now. So with that, we're at the Grants and Philanthropy Department, Department 699, in terms of helping you identify where in the overall proposal or the hard copy that can be found. Mayor Grimel, before introducing your department, any reflections?
I just want to thank the departments and the deputy mayor for their hard work in putting together the budget proposal. And of course, I want to thank the council for its diligence in reviewing the budget proposal. So many thanks to everyone whose hard work every year brings to fruition our budget. And with that, I want to turn it over to our acting grants director, Renee Hall.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go through the slides, so who's clicking the slides? Is this it? Yep. Okay. The Grants and Philanthropy organizational chart. Currently, the director position is vacant. We have a grant writer, Michael Martin, grants compliance analyst, Renee Hall. The grants accountant position is vacant. Delia Cork is our grants coordinator. Matthew Turner-Reed is our home repair specialist. And Aaron Hardcastle-Millhouse is our home repair inspector. The mission statement for the Grants and Philanthropy Department is to develop and maintain alternate sources of income, not taxes, revenue sharing, other statutory sources of income to augment activities of other departments. Department staff. Currently, there is a vacant director position, a grant writer, Michael Martin, grant coordinator, Delia Cork, grant compliance analyst, Renee Hall, grant accountant position is vacant, home repair inspector, Aaron Hardcastle-Millhouse, and it's not on here, but Matthew Turner-Reed is our housing home repair specialist. In the current fiscal year, the grant accountant and grant director positions are currently vacant. Renee Hall is currently the acting interim director. The grants department will need a CDBG coordinator. So our proposed positions would be Community Block Grant Coordinator, ARPA Project Manager, ARPA Funds Manager, and ARPA Group Violence Project Manager. The grant-funded positions are Housing Development Specialist, Home Repairs Inspector. What's vacant is ARPA Fund Manager, ARPA Project Manager, and Group Violence Intervention Project Manager. Must have missed the slide, so I can't see that. Oh, they must have went out of order. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Okay, now we're up to date. Grants and Philanthropy. Big plans. Continue to enhance the home repair program, reprogramming CDBG. Continue to apply for grant-funded opportunities to extend programs, bring community development block grant back to the City of Pontiac administration. So that includes spending out all funds that are currently with Oakland County, hire administrator to manage the funds, CDBG coordinator, implementation of annual action plan for CDBG, and that will be the role of the CDBG coordinator. Workforce development we're looking to collaborate with CEO. Continue to raise funds for underfunded projects and new funding opportunities. That includes Youth Recreation Center. After the architectural drawings are available, grants will be more available. And continue to fund the home repair program. I'm still going backwards. Damn it. And that's it.
All right. Acting Director Hall, we recognize that there is a bit of uniqueness to the position that you are standing before us. Presently, you're in the acting role. So some of our questions may not necessarily be best addressed to you, but here you are. So the question of Grants and Philanthropy Department looking forward to the 12 months to come, is it the position of the administration and the department that this is sufficient resources for you to be able to fulfill the mission of your department and adequately perform the expectations that have been spelled out for you by ordinance, by this council, by the mayor and the executive administration?
Yes.
Okay. Pro Tem Carrington, followed by Councilman Rutherford.
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. First, I definitely want to thank you for your presentation on making sure that you tell us exactly what's budgeted for your particular staff, as well as those positions that are vacant. But I do have a couple of questions. One is concerning other professional services. I know it was amended from $300,000 down $50,000 to $250,000. So what is that $250,000 going to be used for when it comes to professional services?
Under which grant are you speaking of?
It's under Grant Management Philanthropy, item 101-699-818-000.
I believe that that is for our contractors. There was a few amendments done in order to increase their contracts and also pay for contracting services.
Do you know which of those companies that you utilize those funds for? What companies that we was contracting with?
Mondo Construction was one. We Preserve Construction was another. Those have been the main two that I know of, but I do believe that there is two more. Plus, there is some lead assessors that was paid out of that fund as well.
I will yield to the Deputy Mayor if he can answer that for more clarity for me.
Thank you, Council President Pro Tem. 101-699-818-000, other professional services. In the current fiscal year, meaning the year that we are in right now, the budget was $300,000. In the proposed upcoming fiscal year, the budget is actually only $50,000. For what the interim director was referring to, I believe, are the home repair program contractors. Yes, and so they are actually budgeted in another line item, which I think is in the ARPA budget.
So for this particular line item, what will you be using that $250,000 for?
So no, in the upcoming fiscal year, it's only $50,000.
Okay.
If you look at the GLs,
Okay.
one's 50,000, the one next to it is 250,000.
The one next to
ARPA
it, that's,
specifically. So is your contention the ARPA funds are for the home repair program?
Correct.
Through the department? Any sense of what other professional services beyond that
Yes.
$250,000 ARPA funded home repair program work might be?
No, sir, I believe that that is all just ARPA home repair.
Okay.
Okay, so
So the $50,000 is a placeholder for the
The
department
$50,000
overall?
is for general other items that the department may need. If they need a subject matter expert to come in and help them with something, then that had not been broken down because we only prepared a specific breakdown of other professional services that were over $300,000.
Okay, thank you for that. President, I have a follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
And my follow-up question to the grant manager, what resources are you using to continually access information to apply for grants for the city?
We use grantdove.com. We receive emails from various sources, eastcivics.com. We look on the State of Michigan website, various agency websites. We look to see if there's any grants available. So we just kind of look all around.
And on your current, with this current budget of your department, does it include the latest technology to make sure to assist with grant tracking?
Actually, we are working on Amplifon to get it up and running in this fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Rutherford.
Good evening.
Hi.
Are you?
No, I'm ready.
No, you go ahead.
Councilman Rutherford, you have the floor.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Good evening. Number one, currently, how many new grants have you guys received since the departure of your former director?
We have received, she left in February, we just received, so $2,130,000.
And is that money budgeted into this for this fiscal year?
We just received them probably within the last 3 weeks. We haven't actually got the money yet. We just were awarded
So
it.
I just want to make sure. So the Sparks grant is not included in this as well because we haven't received that, right?
Correct.
And the Ralph C. Wilson, we have never received the $7 million of that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So my question is, you guys have things budgeted here that's confusing to me. You guys want to buy furniture for what? Do you not see that line item, or you want me to tell you where it's at?
That's not their department.
That's not them? Oh, it says grants. Want me to show it to you?
Are you talking about 690?
Yes.
Redevelopment and housing?
Yes.
That's a different fund.
Oh,
It's
it
just the
is?
last one on that page.
Okay, my mistake. So I guess my question would be, currently you have only one inspector to inspect 125 houses, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how is that manageable when you guys are behind? And also, we currently have individuals who are waiting for it to be inspected. So wouldn't it be easier if we added another inspection position so that we could do both the amount and or if we use code enforcement so they can do dual roles? Wouldn't that help out your department?
Well, yes, it would be nice to have another inspector. However, we have inspected the amount of homes that we said that we would inspect in a year.
So I'm not
Or
referring.
more.
What I'm referring to is you have 125 that have been approved for you guys to do repairs on, correct?
Correct.
You guys have inspected how many? Because from
There is currently 88 homes inspected.
right, so she's done all those by herself.
Correct.
Okay, and so you saying that you feel that you've adequate individuals to do? She's adequate to do all the rest.
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But she can. We have talked to her, and she said that she feels that she can. But, of course, any help that's needed, if she asks for it, we can talk to the building inspectors to see how we can work that.
So the reason why I'm asking this, and this is a question for the administration, not necessarily you, is that we pay for these individuals to be trained, cost-trained, correct? If I don't recall, Deputy Mayor, if you'd like to answer that question.
You're gonna, if you,
I'm yielding. So you want me to go
Good.
through you, and how you want me to do it?
I just don't want it to be conversational. So
Okay,
if you've got multiple questions, ask it once, and then we'll give the floor.
All right, so-
I don't want boop, 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 boop
Cool.
for anybody.
No problem. Multiple questions. Number one, did we not cross-train these individuals to be able to do inspections? If we did, why can't we use them to offset, to keep this process going faster? 3, what is our direct timeline for when these, like, that, so all this first part of this can be done? So those are my questions. Some of the first part of the inspections, all of them are done. So I yield to you, President, and now you can yield to him.
Deputy Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. On the cross-training, yes, building inspector can inspect for the purposes of permits and could inspect for the purposes of determining what needs to be done for the home. On the question of timeline, we have not been held up in being able to move forward because of inability of Ms. Millhouse to inspect homes. That has not been what has slowed us down in moving forward. So to date, we have not needed to have another person actually inspecting houses for the purposes of this program.
And I guess my next question is, as of today, once you hear this question, has all contractors that we currently have agreements with been paid up to date?
That is a question that I will actually have to defer to the purchasing department and to the actual grants department. I will say that I was made aware of some individuals who had not been paid, and to the best of my knowledge, all of those individuals have recently been paid, everyone who has, but that's to the best of my knowledge.
If you can-
Go for it.
I'm sorry. As of today, all invoices that we had has been processed to be paid.
That's what I want.
And to clarify, would it be in the other professional services OC ARPA? Would that be where that is reflected? Or would it be in another fund budget as it relates to the home repair program, ARPA-funded resources? So as the work is being done at homes?
Say that again. I'm sorry. I didn't understand your question.
So we put X million in the home repair program. There obviously is an X million in this line item. So I'm curious, what fund will those draw down from?
Other professional services.
Okay. So we don't have to have that answer in the moment, but I need help understanding how that adds up for this coming fiscal year. Would it not be a larger sum in that other professional services? Yes, sir.
It is in 285-699-818-000, ARP, HRP. So that is where the home repair dollars are being drawn out of. And in this current year budget, it is $2,280,000 budgeted. And of that, 109,220 has been spent as of the printing of this report, which was on May 1st.
Okay, so for the city council's benefit, there is in the general fund 101, the grants and philanthropy department, and then many pages later in fund 285, it's spelled out grants and philanthropy department, and this is all related to American Rescue Plan designated funds. So, looking at that, 285.
Could you give us the GFL number, please?
The GL number is 285 for Department 699. Unfortunately, the proposed budget does not have page numbers on it, so I can't help you find it through that route. We just have to go through the chronology of the GL numbers.
So the department where it says grant and management philanthropy.
Yep.
Okay.
Department 699, Grant Management
So I'm on that
Philanthropy.
page.
There's 285. So I'm curious if you can help the city council understand what would qualify as ARPA funds, other professional purposes. Why would it need to come out of the general fund? Is that helping defray operational expenses of salaries and wages of departmental staff? Because obviously there's other professional services, ARP, HRP, meaning the home repair program of this current fiscal year, $2,280,000. There is nothing in the current recommended budget for the other professional services home repair program. So is your contention that the expending, obviously 109,000, as you mentioned, is the activity through when this report was run. So what's the thought process with not reflecting in the recommended budget that ARPA funding for home repair program? Are you expecting us to make a budget amendment shortly after adopting, or would you like us to reflect that actual number prior to adoption of this budget? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Council President. The short answer is a budget amendment. The long answer, and we'll talk about this during the finance presentation, is that we are tracking a large number of line items that need to be essentially what we will call rolled over to the next budget year because they are ongoing projects. So instead of making a random guess at how much money we thought would be left in there, we are tracking them, and when you go to actually pass the budget, we will give you a preliminary estimate of, as of that date, this is how much money we believe is going to be left in those accounts to actually be reprogrammed for the next year. And then after we close out the budget, after we close out the fiscal year, sometime in August, we will come back to you and say, out of all of the line items that we were tracking, we've reconciled how much we actually spent for the fiscal year 23-24, and now this is the amount that needs to be put into fiscal year 24-25.
We always welcome that correcting through the real application of the funds, but I just want to advise that if mid-June is here and we have a closer sense, I'm not going to approve a recommended budget of 0 if we know that it's in the vicinity of 1.75 million. You know what I mean? Why play the shell game if we know a closer approximation? So I respect and understand why it wouldn't be in here yet, but a month from now, we might be in a stronger financial forecasting position to be able to include that. Councilwoman Rutherford, I'm sorry, Pro Tem Carrington, then Councilwoman Rutherford.
I'll pass right now.
Okay, Councilwoman Rutherford.
To the administration, what is the total amount of the grant funding from United Way that we have gotten, and what have we actually spent out of that fund? The grant that was before 25, how much have we spent? Oh, he talking, so he had to wait to,
Defer to the Deputy Mayor. Voila.
thank you.
Thank you. I do not know off the top of my head exactly how much money we received from the United Way grant. Do you have that number on your hands right now?
Yes, I'm pulling up.
And my follow-up would be, once you found, I know the number, how much was overspent?
So that I can actually answer. We did not overspend the grant.
Okay. So from what I was given, you actually did, so I'm confused on how what I have and versus, explain to me how it wasn't overspent, I'm asking. Because I believe it was, over, from what I was told, it was $106,000. So I just want to know clarity, is there money left in that grant? How was it spent? And if it hasn't been overspent, then it's a typo and it needs to be corrected. Just
Typo in the budget or in another source?
in another source.
Okay. Well, so if $1 million of recreation program, this is an arbitrary number for the sake of breaking it down, if $1 million of recreation programming is paid for by a grant, and they spend $1.5 million, the grant-funded portion, unless the grant application specifically said it can only be this funding source, then the grant is fully spent of 1 million, and then now we have to find an alternative
Right.
revenue source for the 500, be it either the youth recreation millage or the general fund or
Right.
some other grants or other funding source. So both can be true, but that there can be spending in excess of what was covered by grant funds, that could be true.
Right.
But it could also be that the grant is not necessarily quote-unquote overspent, it's that the budget is beyond what was covered by the grant.
You're right. But if the grant is for specific, I said it right, specific things, thank you, SPECFIC, got it right. Just want to ensure that it's for that and it wasn't spent on other areas.
Oh, good question. So in terms of
yeah.
making sure that grant-funded resources and revenues are only for the prescribed purpose.
Like tutoring, which is what, that type of stuff.
Okay.
So that's why I'm asking this question.
Is the United Way grant in federal grants others in the Fund 285, or would it be housed elsewhere? Would it be housed in the youth recreation or parks and recreation budgets? Because we can wait to get to that to dive in deeper.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
I believe the United Way grant is in, yes.
Excuse me, I did not mean to interrupt. But this is just something that Renee and I have been working on. The United Way grant was $392,000. At the end of the fiscal year last year, what was spent was $164,158.59. So as of today, what was available was $179,238.91. So where the confusion comes in and reading on the line item, it's broken down. So the grant you spend down. However, when we look at it, BS&A is under a non-reverting line. So what happened in that non-reverting line, more money was added to that line, which should have never happened because it's a grant.
That's helpful. But what department, what funded line item in the budget is it housed in? Is it in your department? Okay, so we can delve deeper when we get to that section. But that's helpful. What determines which grant funds stay housed under grants and philanthropy that we're looking at now? Is there a strong determinant? Is it mainly like who's running point, who's got the capacity? If there's no other realistic home in City Hall, like I see obviously the Kaboom grant, which continues on, still hasn't been finalized out. In the ideal world, it probably would have been housed in the Parks and Recreation, but since that didn't exist at the time, it had to fall somewhere. Can you help us understand now and moving forward, where would grant-funded resources be housed in the budget, both general fund or Fund 285? I imagine 285 is kind of reserved for American Rescue Plan funding. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. And the larger answer to your question is that there has not been a very hard and fast rule about where grant funding lands and should be. And that is actually one of the things that I alluded to in my opening remarks, that we need to get fully staffed in our finance department so that we can have a more streamlined effort on how we are going to handle all of these items going forward.
Okay. Further discussion on grants and philanthropy. Councilwoman Rutherford.
So, for that particular grant, even though it's under, now we know where it is, isn't it allocated for tutoring, if I'm not mistaken?
The breakdown is multiple things. It is actually broken down to several categories. One is personnel, one is fringe, one is contract services, one is wraparound support, travel, equipment, supplies, occupancy, utilities, evaluation, PD and training, other program costs. And that's where you get your total of $392,000.
May I have a copy of what you're reading, please?
Sure can.
Thank you.
Final discussion on grants and philanthropy. Grants and philanthropy. You may find that we'll have follow-up questions, as we further review, especially since there's some, for grants and philanthropy, it kind of has a reach into other departments. So if there's not a question now, doesn't mean there won't be one in the future. Pro Tem Carrington, followed by Councilman Goodman. Is that a hand? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Goodman, go
No,
first.
it wasn't a hand.
Just one final question for the grants manager. You stated in this year's plan is that you're looking for resources to help fund the new rec center. Right now, have you spoken with anyone out there with potential to help fund this rec center?
We have submitted a few appropriations, two in the amount of $7 million and one in the amount of $2 million.
Okay. And we haven't got an answer back on those? These are things that you...
No, we haven't received an answer as of today.
And on one of those, I did author a letter of support on behalf of the City Council to the potential federal appropriation from the United States House of Representatives. Okay. So the council weighed in support of that, prompted by the Grants and Philanthropy Department. Councilman Rutherford?
Although this is just a general statement, a question. You just said something. You said, I just want to make sure I'm piggybacking off of President Pro Tem. $7 million we asked for, or we applied for correctly for the
Applied.
So we have not received it.
No.
Because oftentimes what's confusing to me is that we'll say we're waiting, or we're waiting for the number, and we don't actually have the funding. So can we just, until we actually have it in hand, stop doing that? Because it confuses not you, sweetheart. It's very confusing when we say we have the Sparks grant, because that has been said, when we actually don't have the Sparks grant. Or we received, as if we have it, what I'm referring to, so that the administration can understand, or that we received the Ralph C. Wilson money when the money has actually never been in our caucuses. So I'm just confused. I get confused sometimes when we say we have that money. So that's why I was asking, is it physically here? Like, can I go get a check? Not that I could, but could you go get a check?
Right. I think the wording that you would be looking for is awarded.
Okay.
When we say awarded, that means that we have the money, and or if it's not here, it's coming.
Okay.
For sure.
I just want to make. The
So
mayor's hand up.
the Spark grant is for the state of Michigan, one of their departments, $1 million in pursuit of Galloway Lake Park improvements. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that has been applied for. The odds are strong based upon the awarding process and what's been communicated, because we applied for it last year and didn't get it. But it has not been awarded yet. Okay, so
Correct.
that's Spark. It's already been asked about youth recreation financial support. It's been applied for, no awarding of any sort. So the final one, just to make sure we're on it, is Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. That was for, well, I want to make sure I got it
$7
right,
million.
but for additional resources as it relates to the Pike Street Clinton River Trail Connector Project, or were they also under consideration for other projects as well?
So it's my understanding that they will sign an agreement once the state of Michigan is done with their review of our agreement.
And when you say the state of Michigan review of our agreement, do you mean that we have with the state of Michigan on something else, or what?
So
The mayor might want to.
Yeah, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director, but my understanding is that the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation has awarded us the grant. Again, I want to try to be really clear and precise. So there's us applying for a grant. We all know what that means. There's us being awarded a grant, which is them telling us, you're getting this. And then there's actually getting the money in hand. And so I think typically what we talk about and celebrate is the award. Yes, it's important we actually get the money, but it would be really unusual for us to get an award and not get the money. So what I understand to be the case, and jump in anytime, Director Hall, is that when it comes to the Pike Street project, we've got roughly, this is ballpark, $16 million coming from the federal government in the form of a RAISE grant. In addition to that, we've got roughly, I believe, $4 million that was awarded by the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. First of all, we will never directly get that money from the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation because they are giving it to the Pontiac Community Foundation. They will sign an agreement with, well, they may have already signed an agreement with the Pontiac Community Foundation, I don't know, but they're going to send the money to the Pontiac Community Foundation only after we enter into an agreement with MDOT for the letting of the Pike Street project. Does that make sense?
It's convoluted, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Is that accurate, Director Hall?
that's accurate.
So there will never necessarily be a budget amendment in the future or a reflection of at least that foundation's funds for that particular project. Now, that foundation may want to invest in other projects in the future that are directly with the city of Pontiac, but that's not applicable here. Okay. Councilman Rutherford.
Okay, so I got all of that. Thank you, Mayor, for explaining it. But wasn't there talks, and I was in those meetings because I sit on the economic board with President McGinnis, that we were going to create our own fiduciary so that we would be actually our fiduciary that we created as a city would be receiving the Ralph C. Wilson. So my question is, have we set that up, or do you have a timeline on when you actually are going to set that up so that Community Foundation would no longer be the fiduciary of these funds? We would actually have our own. So I yield to the president. I yield to the president to yield to you guys.
Mayor Graham.
There had been some discussion of moving in that direction, but a decision was never made to move in that direction. I think it's still something we're open to and we think probably makes sense.
Okay.
So I don't say that to say that we're opposed to that. I think we are in favor of that.
Okay.
Obviously, I think we want to first make sure that we've got a permanent grants director on board, et cetera. But I can share that for purposes of this project, the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation is very clear that they intend to give these funds to the Pontiac Community Foundation. Mm-hmm. So it would be for future such projects that we would be looking to set up a separate 501c3. And it's sensitive because it has to be independent from the city, but at the same time, we would want there to be considerable ties with the city.
Right.
I want to speak delicately about that.
And I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't mishearing, so I correct myself, that we're not, that we're gonna create one in the future. That's what I wanted to know. Because we do have to pay on that. They do receive the percentage, 1% of it, correct? Ralph C. Wilson, Community Foundation does receive 1% of the Ralph C. Wilson money, correct?
That's right, although in this particular instance, the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation is giving more money than they had intended to in order to cover that fee.
Okay.
So that fee actually will not be coming out of the city's portion of that grant.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Good questions. Any final questions on grants and philanthropy at this stage in the process? Hearing none, thank you very much, Acting Director Hall. We move on next in the roster, Parks and Recreation Department. We have Director Price with us. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, anything before we turn it over to Director Price? Okay. Director Price, you have the floor. We recognize that there are specific separate budgets because there are specific millages. So we leave it to you to how you would like to present it, and then we'll delve into it from there.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Torrance Price, just like the tar on the roads, Torrance. Glad to be here tonight. We're here to talk about budget presentation, Parks and Recreation, fiscal year 24-25. Here's the mission: to provide the citizens of Pontiac with diverse recreational and enrichment activities and great spaces in which to carry out those activities. Here's our Parks and Recreation organizational chart. You have myself, you have Tanisha Taylor, Youth Recreation Manager, John Cantrell, Assistant Youth Recreation Manager. You have Deborah Finley, Senior Rec Manager for our seniors. You have Evelyn Joe, Valerie, Nathan, and Sylvester. You have Alex, who's our Parks Manager, and we have a Parks Ground crew. At this slide, it says 5, but currently right now we are down to 4 because we had one that transferred to a different department. So we have 2 more positions for Parks Ground crew that has been submitted to our HR department to fill.
If you want to pause right there, I want to make sure I understand that correctly. So under the Parks Division, you have a Parks Manager and Parks Grounds. Right now, you have 3 actively in place?
4.
You have 4 actively in place with a 5th vacancy.
Well, there's actually, we had 6 the start of when I came on board, 1 left, and then at the time of this slide, there was 5, and then 1 other person just transferred to a
Setting
different
aside
department.
the slide, what's in the budget? Are there 5 positions or 6 positions budgeted for Parks Grounds crew?
There's 6 budgeted.
Okay, so there's 6 budgeted, right now 4 occupied. Does the budget proposal for the coming fiscal year maintain the 6?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not proposing necessarily more budgeted positions, but the vision is that there'll be more actual based on filling of vacancies. Thank you. Please proceed.
Here's the Parks and Recreation goals for the fiscal year 24. Break ground on Youth Center, break ground on Parks Master Plan projects, finalize park land conversion, streamline recreation protocols/procedures, continue high level of senior participation, increase quality life for residents. And that's it.
So we show in the general fund, Department 751, Parks and Recreation, it's 120,000 other professional services. What's the manifestation of that in real life application? What's that covering? Is that something you're familiar with?
In the general fund?
In the general fund.
Is that a 101?
It's a 101, yep.
8. That's for our parks. I'm sure that services, things to get done outside at our parks, at our facilities. We have over 530 acres, and there's some major projects that has to be done to get our parks up and operational. Okay. Some titty things that you got to take care of.
Yeah, it shows the 21-22 budget, that it has that Department 751 in the 101. We need the administration's guidance on where you're actually funding these respective activities, like what funds, because that obviously is dormant now. It's not included in the current year or the upcoming year. So is there any general fund expending for Parks and Recreation? Or is it only millage driven?
It is not only millage driven. Which line item are you looking at?
You tell me, what's the line item for the Parks and Recreation budget?
Parks ground maintenance, 101-818, 702.000, salaries and wages, has a proposed budget of $861,739.
So you have at least a dormant skeleton department of 751 in the budget for Parks and Recreation overall. You've opted to use Department 818 Park Grounds Maintenance as your budgetary vehicle for all of the Parks and Recreation activities, Mayor?
Well, not entirely. So if one means Parks and Recreational activities to mean the entirety of the Parks and Recreation Department, there are really three divisions in that department. There's the Senior Center Division, which is funded either entirely or almost entirely out of the senior millage. There is the Youth Recreation Division, which is funded entirely out of the Youth Recreation millage and grant dollars. And then there's the Parks Division, and it is the Parks Division that is funded solely through general fund dollars and in some instances, grants.
Okay. But the Department 818 is Parks Grounds Maintenance, and it seems to be that's occupying all of the general fund activities, but there is still a Department 751 Parks and Recreation, so it's trying to reconcile that. The clerk very helpfully tried to help, since there aren't page numbers, to clue us in on the department numbers, so that way we could at least use the general ledger numbers to find it. So obviously Parks and Recreation isn't necessarily where we need to look. So we're now at 818 Parks Grounds Maintenance. So when it comes to the general fund, that's the activity for Parks and Recreation. But the fund for Senior Centers Millage is Department 212, and the fund for Youth Recreation is Department 208. So if we're looking more broadly at Parks and Recreation Department, it is 818. First, are there any questions about Parks and Recreation, also known as Parks Grounds Maintenance?
Yes.
Councilman Rutherford, followed by
Oh,
Pro
no,
Tem
you
Carrington.
have him, come back to me.
Pro Tem Carrington.
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. What are your short and long-term plans for keeping parks clean and utilized this summer?
Well, right now, we partner with DPW. DPW has been doing the mowing, and as they're filling up their staff, we are also contributing to do that also. We are trying to maintain and look at everything on a constant level, understanding that we get phone calls every day. You get phone calls, I get them as well, to check them out and stay on top of them the best that we can. Also understanding that with a team of 5 people and with the amount of acres that we do have for the city of Pontiac, we're going to do the best that we can with what we have to conquer that.
The City Council is definitely receptive to that priority. We've approved investments in the infrastructure and the materials and the staff to pull that off. I think City Council would all agree that we are in a stronger position now than we were 3 years ago when it comes to maintaining our parks, light years ahead, but still not at the ideal, sort of premier level of service, delivery of service and maintenance of those civic assets. The utilization of Department of Public Works, and this might be a question for Mr. Bawa or others, how would that be reflected in the budget? So this department in the general fund for Parks Grounds Maintenance, do you essentially, when you're processing certain payroll or certain materials or purchases, are you utilizing the Parks Ground Maintenance GL numbers, even though it's actually DPW spending them down, or are you doing interdepartmental transfers to reflect that? Because I think it makes sense budgetarily that we show this is what we're investing in, but at least for this recent fiscal year, how might that show actual or perceived deviation between the departments? And if you want to answer that, we'll ask you to use the microphone.
Good evening, council members and mayor. Any expenses relating to the parks grounds is recorded in the 818, that is 101-818. DPW is separate. That is anything that's not relating to the parks, except certain, like, mowing and things like that. They may be doing some of the work, but part of the salary is also charged to the parks department when they do their work.
That's what I want to gain clarity on. So we respect that DPW may be doing the actual mowing. How does that reflect in the funds? Would that mean that DPW's budget is actually cannibalizing a little bit of Parks and Recreation duty, or are you interdepartmentally transferring, or how are you applying that?
Certain portion of the DPW staff salaries being allocated to the 818.
Perfect. Okay, that's helpful. All right. So it's reflected in terms of their work responsibilities.
Here, yes.
So is it fair to say that as the parks grounds crew is fully staffed out, will that change? Or are they handling different aspects? What, Director Price, what does it mean in terms of parks ground crew and their responsibilities? So mowing will still be DPW mowing since they've got other mowing duties. Parks are in their rotation.
What normally happens, see, right now DPW has 2 level positions that they're still looking to fill. So until those positions are filled, we double over and help out when it comes to cutting and mowing in certain parks and certain things. As we manage and get our process together, so like special events that goes on at our parks for rentals and things like that, we get the information, we converse with DPW. If they're busy, we get it, we go and get the machinery, go get it cut ourselves, or it's just a partner up on what their schedule is and how they're going to take care of things. But it's really a work in progress that we're really working together to try and figure out and smooth out any rough things that's going on, and then also understand that DPW was the main source for the city of Pontiac for a long time.
Well, I got to say, I welcome that approach because I'd much rather have that sort of partnership and tag team approach versus, oh, well, let's just not have it done. That it's better to do it that. We have the resources, at least between departments. We have the equipment. We've got the capacity between departments. So I welcome that. And I got to say, a real-life application of that was at Oakland Park when we saw the grand opening of the Rodriguez Skate Park, the way in which there was enough park staff in partnership with DPW staff in terms of setting it up, breaking it down, making it, that was very impressive. And I know in previous years, the city of Pontiac simply didn't have those resources, so it never happened. So I'm glad to see that between the departments, there is that open communication and collaboration. Pro Tem?
Yes, it's a follow-up question. Will you be hiring any temporary help doing for the summer months? And if yes, where is that in your budget?
That's a good question. This budget for the summer, I'm thinking real quick, I'm just looking at all the numbers. Because it is part of the new budget. I believe those people have already been hired and budgeted in for this coming summer that's coming up.
And one final question for me. You talked about revenue from the parks. Do you have an estimate of what revenue came in for the renting of the parks in this past cycle?
I have not had a chance to dive in, reach back to those numbers, but one of the things that we did prioritize is working on a different payment scale, because what we realized was we have a lot of people who are not Pontiac citizens who does not pay Pontiac taxes, but they drive near and far to come take advantage of the price rates for the city of Pontiac. So what we're hoping to do is to separate that, make sure the taxpayer dollars, the people who are paying for that in the city of Pontiac are getting the best rate and deals, and those who are not Pontiac residents are paying a higher fee to access and utilize parks.
I'm sorry, one more question. I'm so sorry.
Just don't say it's your last one.
I know, I
You'll
won't
never
say it.
be in trouble.
Concerning GL account 101-810-749.001, I'm assuming that's for vehicles.
Motor fuel, oil,
Yeah,
and
most-
lubricants.
So how many current vehicles do the rec department has at this moment?
You took my question.
I took your question. I'm so sorry.
Well, you guys just approved of vehicles, so we have some on the way, but I believe it's 2 that we have that we utilize, and then there's others that we borrow and use from DPW.
All right, thank you.
And to follow up on that same question, we've just approved a fuel cooperative. Would that be department to department sort of aggregated across and then hitting those GLs, so it'll still be in the separate departments, even if there might be something cohesively by the purchasing division handling the payment of the motor fuel? Does that make sense?
So that is correct.
Okay. Councilman Rutherford, anything further?
Okay. Line item 101-818-707.003 cell phone stipends. It jumped from $5,190 to $11,520. Why? Somebody explain that to me.
Anyone have that offhand? And will we see that in other departments as well? Deputy Mayor?
You should not, I don't believe that you're going to see that in other departments. This is a reflection of actually bringing this department up to how it should be operating. So anyone at the city who has a cell phone, anyone at the city who has a personal cell phone and uses that personal cell phone for city business is eligible to be reimbursed for that phone. They have to fill out the proper paperwork. And so this is a reflection of, as you heard, there are 6 staff members who are grounds crew who previously had not requested that reimbursement. And this is a reflection of that now being included.
All right. Number 2, 101-818-746-001, personal protective wear. Why was that cut out of the budget? It was $4,750, and it says mayor recommended, but is it 0? So was that cut out of the budget, or because it's a blank space? You see it?
So the current fiscal year for personal protective wear, $4,700 is what was amended in the budget. So far this year, $1,300 has been used. The year before that, virtually no activity.
$87.
Yeah, so what's the vision there? Is it been merged into another GL? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, so personal protective wear was merged into uniforms.
Okay.
Last, certainly not least, you did a 6,000 increase on that 101-818-776-001. It was $2,000 in 2023. Now it's $8,000 to $6,000. That's for janitorial supplies. Did we get a better janitorial supplies? We got a better hookup. What we got? Costco's right down the street. Let's go.
But maybe for Parks and Recreation, we now finally are going to be janitoring.
I just want them to. What do
Yeah,
they,
that's a good question. Is the vision now for the coming fiscal year, we finally have facilities to clean and operate for those parks?
Facilities to clean and operate and staff to clean and operate them.
And one more for the road. Last year, you guys had an activity, and that is going to be sand and gravel, 101-818-779-001. It jumped from $41 to $10,000.
Yeah, it's budgeted $10,000 for this and the year to come, but only this year, $41 has been utilized. What's the practical application of sand and gravel?
What's going on?
Okay, so last year, this current fiscal year, $41 is what was actually allocated to that line, but $4,667 is what was actually budgeted. The idea, again, being that finally this year, we hope that we will actually be utilizing the ball fields and therefore bringing in sand and gravel to keep them up and operating properly.
Does that mean, just my final one for the road?
Third final question.
That's it.
Just don't use the word final,
Okay.
and you'll be good.
I won't say, you know what, brother, you're right. Sir.
Don't put limitations on yourself.
No, never. I died like Lazarus and rose again. Okay, so listen. Question is this: are we getting the portable scorekeeper this year for Bodette Park? Is that budgeted in here?
Yeah, what shape did that take?
Yeah,
It
what
was
happened?
previously discussed.
Portable, what now?
The ball field at Bodette Park, the scoreboard, temporary or long-term, what shape is that taking?
Well, that's also part of our bigger project in terms of the community parks, in terms of redoing an actual physical scoreboard. But in terms of getting a mobile scoreboard, that's very inexpensive and one to get. It's just a matter of who's going to manage that scoreboard and making sure that we get that scoreboard back and have a place to lock that up and store it.
And I just remembered this because Deputy Stevens told me it would happen. Are we repairing Bodette Park's basketball gravel this year? Because that's what you told me last year. Is that budgeted in here this year?
Go for it.
Again, as Director Price stated, the repair of the basketball court is part of the overall park repair project.
So that would be American Rescue Plan funded and that Bodette qualifies as a community level park. Community park? Okay.
So that means you're doing it? Just need a yes or no?
For the purpose of what you're requesting, the answer is no.
They're not specifically committing to the project in a budget line item. We'll write a resolution.
Yeah, it's gonna have to happen.
Okay. Yeah, we can specify what improvements at a community park, particular community park, are a special priority. Deputy Mayor, anything further?
So, yes. So again, I wanted to be transparent. The councilwoman asked for a yes or no answer, so I gave her the no answer. The more wordy answer is the American Rescue Plan Act dollars are going to be used to do an upgrade to the park. I do not know if that upgrade will happen. Actually, I can tell you, I do not believe that upgrade will happen in calendar year 2024. That upgrade may happen before the end of fiscal year 25. So it may happen before June 30th, 2025, but I cannot say that for certain. So if you ask me a yes or no answer, I'm going to tell you no.
Can I?
No.
Because yeah, it's coming. I'm gonna wait.
But we have understanding of where we stand budgetarily, at least. Pro Tem.
Next Tuesday.
Yes.
Oh, yes, he was next, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Has Parks and Rec been utilizing the funds that have been set aside for professional development and training?
Yes, they went to the conference early this year. I had just started, so I did not attend. And we are looking to continue professional development.
The reason why I asked that, because I'm looking at line item 101818957.002 where it says training expense. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to follow where I see it in the line itself. I see it go from like $1,200 for activity in 2022 to 2023. The budgeted amount being $28,000, and that being the recommended budget, but I'm not really seeing any activity in that line item to justify that amount. Now, of course, I would like there to be as much training taken as possible, but I just want to see.
Is that a standard formula per head of employees? So it sounds like they're just sort of mapping how many work in parks and recreation. Boom, that's the training expense.
So, well, so with that, what was the expense for the past year?
Hasn't reflected yet. So that is a question that if you can research and get back to us, where are we at so far with this fiscal year for training expense for this department?
Thank you.
There is parks and neighborhood projects. About $50,000 is the target. What would be some example of parks and neighborhood projects? Is that like smaller improvements that isn't going to come from ARPA or grant funds or elsewhere, and you just need to make a repair or something? What would be the practical application of those funds?
I would think like we just have neighborhood cleanups, those small things like that that's kind of going on. If we need to get extra dumpers, if we need to pick up tree limbs, leaves, repair a slide, a swing, something like that.
And do you feel that you have moving in the direction of staffing capacity or managing of small vendors or contractors where you can pull that off? Because obviously prior to your time, it hasn't been able to manifest, or at least not from this line item. I of course, can think of quite a few punch list items at some of our smaller parks that aren't in the mix with grant funding or ARPA improvements. So is it best for us to communicate through the executive administration? My simpler question is your team able to actually act on that, those small repairs?
Well, to perfectly be honest with you, I've been here 135 days, so I'm still grasping and learning everything that needs to be done, how to be done, what process we need to go about and do it. And now, as we have been diving into the neighborhood and mini parks and looking at our community parks and things like that, for the bigger things that we're looking to do, that has given us a chance to go out to parks more and see different things that needs to go on. We just replaced the slide not too long ago at one of the parks. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that's given us a chance to get more detailed attention to some of the small things that need to go on at the parks. I don't know if I can say that right now, but definitely in the next 60 to 90 days, I can have a better answer for you.
No, that's helpful. I mean, but it's just a real, sort of the real life impact question of if we've got the funds, are we going to be able to use them?
Right.
Because council wants to authorize it to make it happen. Pro Tem, then Councilman.
So GL account 208-756-779.020, you have two lines of programming.
You going ahead? We're just trying to get through the Parks and Recreation main part. You go into the
Oh,
youth
I'm
recreation?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any final thing on parks?
Yeah, just for parks. You stated earlier we have $50,000 that's allocated for like community projects. So let's say hypothetically it was a community organization like the neighborhood organization or District 1 who want to put flowers in a community area. Could that money be allocated for that, or do we
No,
have?
unless you mean a park.
It's out of your budget.
I was trying to get out of y'all, but okay, cool.
Now, if it was at a park, though, then that's a different,
It is a park. What we tell you what it's called?
it can't be an unofficial,
Oh, okay, then it's not a park. Sorry.
unauthorized park.
That's right.
For the sake of time, anything else on Parks and Recreation?
Well, to actually get the answer for what you were just asking, so I can know for myself. So if it was something that would go specifically in an existing park already, and residents or a community group wanted to do something in a existing park, it would come out of that fund.
Right. If the mayor and department director authorize it, because they certainly
Understood.
could say, nah.
They could.
And then we could try and do it as a city council district project.
Understood. Thank
Yeah,
you.
but that's helpful for us to have that frame of reference. Anything finally about Parks and Recreation? Now we're going to go to the specific millage-funded departments. The order that was provided is Senior Centers first, which is Department 212. Director Price, anything you'd like us to know before we start asking specific questions?
No, go right ahead, ask.
Okay,
You want to start?
you can go for it.
So we doing seniors or we doing?
Seniors.
Okay. 1 second. Come back to me. Ask somebody else. Hold on 1 second. My notes is back there and I can't leave it.
That's right. Quorum is on a knife's edge.
I know.
All right, so the senior activities millage is 212. The recommended budget for this last year was $823,000. What's proposed this year is just under $500,000, so that's approximately 40% decrease. Is it fair to say that that decrease is because of the phasing out or the completion of grant-funded or privately funded projects, or is there anything else that we should know about for that change?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. That is partially the reason, but there is actually a larger reason. If you go to the last page of the senior recreation programs where it says net of revenues appropriations fund 212 beginning balance, fund balance adjustments, and ending fund balance, you can see that over the course of the last few fiscal years, we have been operating that fund in a deficit to the point of looking at this year. If we were to have continued in that funding vein, we would have overspent the department. And so we are trying to right-size spending in that department to match the actual funds that are brought in.
Okay. But obviously, federal grants, others is no longer applicable. That's $133,000 from this year and $160,000 from the year prior. There is obviously no longer grants from Oakland County Senior Centers improvements, so that's a substantial change. You are not proposing any dramatic reduction in staffing or salaries or services. It's a matter of sort of right-sizing the figures, but also taking into account there aren't any grant funds that are queued up presently. What's the rental revenue been? So it looks like the figures that you've got in your recommended budget are pretty close to at least what was through in the last few months rentals, and the rentals are already surpassing the previous year's rentals, not by big, but by a few thousand more. So is the expectation that the Bowens and Ruth Peterson Senior Centers will continue to generate revenue of, somewhere in the low single digits or the middle double digits, upwards of $15,000 annually in rental?
Yes, for right now, yes.
Okay. And then obviously, if the Youth Recreation Center can have rental facilities within it, then we would rebudget, or we'd look at the budget because we'd have new assets worth renting. Okay? Councilwoman?
Number 1. Let's look at these overtime wages, shall we? Last year it was $9,000. This year it's $46,000. Can I get an explanation for that? That's the first one. The second one is this. The janitorial services last year was $967. Now it's $5,000. Can I get an explanation for that? The last one is 212-815-818-037, the contractual janitorial services. Last year, it was $37,728. This year, y'all have it for $60,000. And I'd like to get an explanation for that. And just for the show of time, 212-815-864-000, which is a truck and bus rental. Last year it was $7,850. Now y'all want to put it up to $10,000. Can I get an explanation for that?
I will take the first one and the last one. So the first one for overtime wages, and speaking with our director, the amount of hours that were being requested, that was after our closing time.
Okay.
Meaning that rentals wanted to come in after the building was closed. That means we have to disperse the staff for extra time, or be it some type of special event that is coming up, that is someone who may be carry some importance in Pontiac that has an event. It may come on a day that maybe we're not particularly open, but we have to disperse somebody to handle it. That's why those hours have gotten higher this year. For the last one, they're looking to budget more trips and more activities for seniors to get around and do more things. And for do that, you have to put down deposits early for buses, and that's why that number is higher.
So could we add more money to that? Because I know for a fact that the Bowen Center some people are on fixed income.
Correct.
Their budget is 800. What's the number? The senior center budget for the year? What's the exact number? I yield to.
I'm not clear on what you're asking.
I'm asking, what is the budget for the senior citizens, for the seniors? What's the millage? How much does it pay a year? That's what I'm asking.
And then while he's finding that number, my related question on overtime is that I don't think it's fair to the senior services millage or to your department if you alone have to shoulder that. If it's another department's functions, like communications
Yep.
or other utilization, a town hall meeting,
Yep.
something that might be tied into grant funding, I don't think that senior services overtime line item should be the one that has to take that.
Right.
And eat that cost, because that's not truly senior services.
Correct.
That's, just it's sort of a byproduct of being the building. So maybe that's already being interdepartmentally reflected. But I think just like how we talk about with DPW
Yep.
and shared, we appreciate that cross-departmental collaboration, but especially with our millage funded, the taxpayers are saying, we want it for this purpose, so we don't want, oh, well, they got the facility, they got to pay, they got to incur that cost. Mayor?
Yeah, we agree with you, President, and really how it should work, but this is not how the budget we presented is structured. How it should work is that the overtime should be expended, obviously, by the senior centers in this case, but then there should be a chargeback to the department that's actually organizing the event. So we do want to work to try to actually bring that to fruition, because those chargebacks are very important. It's the department that's actually holding the event who should be charged with expending the money for the overtime through a chargeback. And that's not how this budget is structured, although our hope is that once we bring on a permanent finance director, we will be able to implement that in a more robust way.
Okay. And Deputy Mayor, do you have the answer in terms of what that millage generates for senior services annually?
So the anticipated millage for the budget is $521,981.
Okay, so just under $522,000 is what the senior services millage
And-
is expected to generate. You have the floor,
Right.
Councilwoman.
And that is split between both Bowen and Pat Ruth Peterson, right? And they're both getting equal amounts?
So, no, they are both getting appropriate amounts. And the reason why I say no is if you take, for example, the senior center manager. The senior center manager actually spends most of their time at the Bowen Center, so the Bowen Center technically would be getting more funding than the Ruth Peterson Center. If you look at the cost of utilities at the two buildings, the cost of utilities at the two buildings is different. From a standpoint of programming, yes, both centers are receiving whatever programming they have requested.
And so I guess my follow will be, what is the breakdown of programming amount that's spent at the Bowen Center, and what is the breakdown of the amount of programming that's spent at Ruth Peterson? Because someone
For the
answered.
sake of time, I don't think we're going to be able to get it on the fly.
Right,
but
not on
we-
the fly, but-
We request that. I think
Yeah.
that's very useful. And just to make sure we're looking at it correctly, in the past, there have been two separate departments, 813 for Ruth Peterson and 814 for Bowens. And so the budgetary approach is that it will be a combined department, 815 Senior Citizen Recreation Programs, correct? Okay, in addition to the
But
212, 813, excuse me,
what,
the 212000 for the department overall.
point of privilege.
Yes.
The reason why I'm asking that, oftentimes there have been complaints that one center gets more funding than the other. And so I just want to know what we're spending on programming and if we need to put more money in it or find a way to get more money so that everybody's treated equally. You know, that's my thing. Everybody treated equal. So that's where I'm at with it.
Any final discussion on senior centers and senior services? All right, now let's transition to youth recreation, Department 208. Director Price. Any high-level items so what you said in your overall departmental goals identified is that ground is broken on Youth Recreation Center, that there's still quality programs that are delivered. Those are for the current fiscal year. You feel as though these resources budgeted adequately meets the mission of your department?
Right. Well, when it comes to the Youth Recreation Center, one thing that needs to be highlighted, this is the biggest group project we will ever participate with in our life. So what that means is there's other aspects to making that happen that has to go in place. And if you ever watch track and field, it's like passing off the baton. So by the time the baton gets to me, I have to sprint and get it to the finish line. But also that means by the time the baton gets to me, all the checks and balances, all the I's have been dotted, all the T's have been crossed that allow us to make us get over that hump and making sure that people actually see this come to fruition. And when it comes to programming and other youth activities, my goal is to continue to work and provide a structure, provide consistency, to where people know what they're going to always see and get from us from a yearly basis. The discipline in terms of studying our craft, learning our craft, improving our craft, learning what the best programs are, learning how to market our programs. The more people understand that we have these opportunities and putting the right things in front of our youth so they have something to look forward to outside the school day or especially in the summertime.
Okay. And so, but for the coming fiscal year, there will be remote locations for youth recreation programming. That'll be the administration.
Yes, but
of
we'll be
those
working on the
programs.
details of that too.
Okay. I want to welcome Councilman Parker, and for your frame of reference, we are on Department 208 Youth Recreation. All right, so further questions on youth recreation, just for everyone's frame of reference, we're looking at, for this budget to come, $1.233 million is what's being generated for the youth recreation millage, unless I'm reading that wrong. There is Williams International Educational Fund that's been housed in youth recreation. I'm trying to understand what's the practical application of that for the Williams International Education Fund. Has it been expended this year, or how will it be expended? Looks like we're looking at $380,000. Is that rollover money, or is that a new infusion from that corporate partner in the community? Mayor?
Yeah, my understanding is much of that is rollover money. So I believe that the development agreement with Williams International requires them to contribute $150,000 per year. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, though, Director or Deputy Mayor or Saker for that matter. But my understanding is that it's $150,000 per year, and so much of that is rollover money.
Okay. Further discussion on youth recreation, Department 208.
Councilwoman Rutherford has the hand up.
Councilwoman Rutherford?
So we're doing youth rec in its entirety or just that line?
No, in its entirety.
All right, here we go. Number one. I've been writing these down for weeks, so I want to make sure I'm asking this right. Has every event lost money that we've had in youth rec?
To my understanding, I believe it has.
So every one of them have lost money? Okay, cool.
When we say events, are we talking like city events?
We're talking about every,
This is separate from the city.
this is separate from the city.
This is
But
separate
there's a
from the
budget
city.
line item that says city events. What does that mean in the youth recreation?
Those are still programs that we're running, but it's for the city.
What would be an example of that, Mayor?
So
Wait a
I
minute,
think the example here are things like the Winter Festival, the daddy-daughter dance, the mother-son dance, the Mother's Day brunch, things of that nature. So these are events, some of which don't charge money, so there's not even an effort or a desire or intent to recover any of the cost. Some of them, the plan all along has been to recover some of the cost, but not all of the cost.
I was trying to
like
ask a
the
clarifying
daddy-daughter
question. I
dance.
don't mean to take the councilwoman's
'cause
floor. It's her time, but
it's me.
I just want to make sure I understand, and we're asking the city events is,
So I'm not
because it's got to show somewhere in the budget. So if that's what you mean by city events, you're saying it's going to cost $15,740-ish for the coming year, but I don't know where that's reflected in the current budget. So, but Councilman Rutherford, is that what you're talking about, those city events?
What I'm referring to is the daddy-daughter dance.
Recreation events.
I'm referring to the Winter Festival. I'm referring to the Harvest Festival. So like, for example, you guys spent $25,000
This year,
this year on the Harvest Festival, even though it didn't make a profit or revenue. How does that equate for it actually helping the youth? That's $25,000 that could have been spent on a youth program. That's $25,000 that could have been spent on different programs. And this doesn't equate what that millage is for. And this is the taxpayers' money. So I just need to know how that happened. The second one is the Winter Festival. You guys said that you had sponsors who gave you $3,500. It's not listed here, but also you guys lost $10,800. So again, how does that equate when this is a millage money that's supposed to be for the youth? And then the daddy-daughter dance, which y'all just had, y'all had 28 people there, 28 to 31, excuse me, I want to make sure because I wasn't there. How much was spent on these events, and how does that equate to the youth? Because at the end of the day, the millage is supposed to be for youth programming, not special events. We can have sporadic events, but we can't have all these different events where it loses money because I'm asking for a reason. I want to make sure I understand what are we actually doing with this youth millage, one. Two, how much are we actually spending on programming that we're supposed to spend per program? So for example, if I'm doing computers, are we spending $25,000 on a computer program, but we spending $25,000 on a Harvest Festival? I need it to make sense, so I'm asking you because you're the director. Can you answer those questions for me, please?
well, actually, I can. So whenever you ask, and well, let me back up first. First of all, when the youth rec department started back up, so they're on their own, they're doing the best they can, and this is sometimes their first time going through and doing this. But whenever you have a youth millage, because technically for a program, we're not making money off of that either from a city of Pontiac, but if we're paying staff, if we're buying supplies, technically we're losing money off that too. What the difference comes in, though, is when you want to do special events, getting that special events line and getting that type of work, you got to count the cost. You got to count for every single dollar and count for every single cent for that particular program and thing to do. Now, there are going to be some special events that you are not going to recoup all the cost. Now, how do you offset that? And that's the key, and that's what we're going to be focused and working on going forward, is that it's not just good enough to just say, hey, we're going to do all this, and then the bottom line equates to nothing. Okay, what did you make on this? Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. What went well, what didn't went well? Okay, if you only made $4,000, let's budget $4,000 next year. Let's have some consistency in going in that. How are you going to reach your sponsors? Maybe the supplies, we spent too much on supplies. Okay, let's cut that out. But you know, going through it, I've only been with them 135 days, there's going to be some growing pains in understanding and learning that.
And why I understand that, because I want to be clear, this is not an attack, these are facts. How do we make that make sense to John Q. Public? Because when you have individuals who want to do programming, but we're spending more programming on stuff that doesn't equate actual goals, I just don't understand that. And so that's why I'm asking this question.
And before I let you get to that, Mayor, let me just say this. We're not going to be able to program everything.
I got that.
And that's where we have to streamline and pick out what are the best of the best that we have, what are things that we have to do. There are some programs that are just a must that you have to offer. That usually consists of some type of athletic or sport that you have to have. It's the youth enrichment part that's become the tricky part. Now, how do you properly evaluate youth enrichment programs to putting forth the best ones out there that gets the strongest response, that leads kids to be responsive, that leads them to maybe create a passion for what they want to do for the rest of their life? That's the part we're focusing on and trying to improve.
And then my last question is this. We're paying for rec desks, correct?
Correct.
Are we using or allocating it? So are we actually using it every time somebody comes and checks in so that we can show adequate numbers to equate what we're spending per programming?
In my research, yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
What budget line item would that cost be in? Rec desk?
That's a software.
Okay.
Mayor has
Grumman?
a statement.
Well, let me begin by saying I don't understand this focus on covering our costs, because the purpose of the youth recreation programming, including both sports and athletics and enrichment programming, is not to make a profit. It's not to cover costs. We don't cover our costs on any of our youth recreation and enrichment programs because they're free. And so they're funded through the youth recreation millage. And the youth recreation millage can and is properly used for any programming that benefits youth through recreation and enrichment. That includes all of the programs that have been referenced. The whole focal point of the Winter Festival and the Spring Festival and the summer and fall festivals is on the youth. If you've ever attended those events, it is about fun and entertainment for young people. Yes, their parents come with them, but it is really about the young people. And the same's true for the daddy-daughter dance or the mother-son dance. So the focus is on young people. And we do charge modest fees to try to recover some of our costs with the daddy-daughter dance and the mother-son dance. But these are all important and enriching youth recreational activities that are an important fabric of our community.
Were you pointing at? Oh. Well,
Yeah, so,
I'm going to ask a question.
okay,
I still have to understand where it's showing up financially. So in the youth recreation millage, city events for 208000, and this isn't necessarily a Director Price question, I'm showing 15 grand going forward. But then we go under the recreation facility, city events, 208756745.003. I show $75,000 as we stand when this ran for this fiscal year. It's going to go down from this department down to $45,000. What's the delineation between which city events are booked as which city events? Obviously, the question of impact and the caliber of the investment and sort of what it yields, what it benefits for the community and youth is a valid question when it comes to programming, supplies, city events. I just need to try and understand what constitutes the city event versus programming or supplies. Deputy Mayor?
So to make sure that I am understanding your reference, $15,742 was your first reference, correct?
Yes.
That is income. That is the amount of money that we have brought in or that we anticipate we would be bringing in for charging for events. The $45,000 is the amount that we have said that we would put towards specific events as have already been referenced out of this line item, out of this funding source.
Okay, so your seasonal festivals or dances, those are what you are anticipating or have been city events. That's how you, and that's delineated differently than sign up for X program through recdex.com. All right, so $45,000 is what you're proposing for the coming fiscal year, offset by about $15,000 in anticipated revenue, so that's a net negative of $30,000 for those type of city events. But your vision is that there would be less expended for next year versus this year's fiscal year on city events. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I had that right. Councilwoman Rutherford?
all right, so if I want to get to that part, the problem is this. For example, when we do rec supplies, you guys spent $15,867 last year. This year, you want to spend $75,000. What supplies are we buying? We don't supply our vendors with anything, correct? Because the vendors are paid to run programs, so they must have their own supplies. Is that not correct?
Yeah, well, how's that
Yeah.
reflect?
Not necessarily. It's up to the vendor to, when they are doing the contract with us, we go over what the supplies and things that are needed. If they will supply, if they have their own supplies, or do they need any supply assistance from us? To my understanding, since I have been here. Now, in terms of what we spent last year, I'm not aware of that. But I do know, and I do know from what we have discussed, and that number is going to reflect of what we were trying to do for the whole year, because what we're looking to do for the whole fiscal year 24-25 is supply all programming and what we're going to be running starting July 1st on through to the next year to June 30th.
Okay, so programming is 208-756-779-020. Programming was $106,000 in 2023. It says UW, that's United Wholesale Mortgage is what we paid?
No, that's the grant.
Okay, so
United
that's the
Way
grant.
grant?
That's
So the
United Way
grant this
grant.
year is only 82,000?
No, that's reflective of what I mentioned earlier, where that number is not technically correct because of the grant is being treated as if it's a non-reverting account, so it's been budgeted for and is not supposed to be budgeted for. All we have to spend left for the United Way grant is $179,238.91. That's all we have, and it has to be allocated into those line items that I read off to you earlier.
So the reason why I'm asking about programming and events, so that we're clear, is that we have major issues happening within our community. And we have people who have 4 or 5 children that can't afford $40 time, because 40 times 5 is $200. So if I got 5 kids and I want all my 5 kids to go to the youth programs, they can't afford it. And I was told that y'all had scholarships. Cool, that's great. So, but the problem is that we have to we have to make sure that everything we do in this millage court actually benefits the students long term and not just a picture moment. And that's what I'm asking for, because it's a lot of picture moments, but I don't see how it actually benefits. Like the STEM program that you guys do with Ms. Williams, that benefits the kids long term because it helps them work on science and engineering and math. Okay, whereas another program they have don't benefit them at all. I just want to know what we're spending our money on, because we have to answer these questions, and people shouldn't get offended or try to justify what I'm saying. You spent what you spent. Just make it make sense. That's all.
I'm gonna answer your question, then we're gonna turn.
Okay.
The deputy has had his hand up for a while,
not gonna do
but to answer that, even we are a bridge between the schools and the community. The Parks Department is. We are not. It's not smart on our part to try and duplicate what the school does. We can't do that. I don't follow little Johnny into the school to see what he does and all day long how that part is benefiting him. However, what we are trying to do, what my goal is to fill in the gap to where schools used to have the funding to offer certain things and can't do it no more, that we supply those things. For an example, like a sewing class. Everybody's not going to be interested in sewing, but there's still a niche for that because we have people that's going to benefit from that. And so with me coming in and us working together and talking, we have to go over all the things that we have done before, find out, and there's going to be new rediscovery that's going on because I'm new to the puzzle this year. New discovery and find out what the kids are interested in, what's being offered, what's being responded to positively, what's being responded to negatively. So long story short, in programming, you never perfect it because you're always reevaluating, you're always analyzing and studying to be the best as you can be.
I just want to, before I turn it over, sewing, since we had that presentation and you've invoked that, would that be a program that has a cost to a participant? Is there an admission or registration fee for that or other programs?
Not for any Pontiac residents.
Okay.
Because that's under the youth millage.
Okay, so the youth millage enrichment program, there isn't a fee. Councilman Rutherford, you were saying a fee for participation. Is that
So,
the city events, or is
those
that?
are the city events.
Okay, city events.
And
I just
so-
wanted to make sure that there wasn't an
No.
admission or a registration cost for those enrichment programs. Because some cities do. I mean,
They
I know
do.
that some municipalities do.
It's done based off of the non-resident who comes in.
Yeah.
Now, so if somebody outside of the Pontiac line, let's say if you're around the street from Waterford, you want to take the class, that's where the fee usually is initiated at.
That doesn't happen too often lately, does it?
Well, we've had some outside the Pontiac residents that have come and participate in some of our programming. So we wanted to be better prepared for that this year.
So this is my last question. You just said you are a direct correlation between the schools and the community, right?
I got to cut you off because
Okay, I just want to ask
the
this.
deputy mayor was next on the speaker's list.
Okay.
But I was still asking a question.
Okay.
And would that be an instance where supplies are paid for out of this GL for the sewing or other enrichment programs? You're saying depending on the contract with the service provider?
Yes.
There may be instances where we're saying, okay, great, you're able to do this program, but we know that you can only do X if the city does Y. Okay, all right. But Deputy Mayor, you were next on the speaker's list.
Thank you, Council President. A few things that I want to draw everyone's attention to. The first is throughout the course of the evening, I have noticed that at some times we are referring to the incorrect column. So I just want to draw everyone's attention. There is the 21-22 activity, so that the money that was actually spent in that fiscal year. There's the 2022-23 activity, the money that was actually spent in that fiscal year. There's the 2023-24 activity, the money that has been spent to date in this current fiscal year as of the time of running of this report, which was 5/1/2024. The next is the budget for the current fiscal year. And then finally, the category that we are actually looking at this evening is the mayor's recommended budget. And the reason why I want to make sure I point that out is, for example, as we talk about recreation supplies, in the current fiscal year that we are in, to date, we have spent just shy of $16,000 in supplies. In this current fiscal year, we budgeted $75,000, but the proposed budget for the upcoming year is a stark reduction down to $25,000. So I just want to make sure that we are actually referencing the proper column as we're talking about next year's budget. The other thing that I wanted to draw attention to is just to go back 50,000 feet to the mission of the Parks and Recreation Department, which is to provide the citizens of Pontiac with diverse recreational and enrichment activities and great spaces in which to carry out those activities. So I say that especially being a devout believer in robust opportunities and the idea of STEAM. And I'm purposely saying STEAM and not STEM because, yes, math and science and technology is awesome. And all of that is something that society needs. But without the arts, without the enrichment, without a lot of different things that create quality of life, there is no reason or value to have students continually focusing on math. Math for math's sake is great if math is what you love and that is your fun. But then that becomes a hobby, and math as a hobby is no more important or valuable than speech or debate as a hobby. So I just want to make sure that as we're talking about what is important, we're not looking at it from the lens of what is important to me, and we're thinking diversely about what may be important to all citizens of the community.
Okay, Councilman Rutherford.
I'm so glad you said that. So here's my thing. As an artist, I respect and love the art. However, I'm also have to worry about how the budget is being spent. So that's my job. That's why I'm asking these questions. It is not to offend anyone. It's to call what it really is and what it isn't. We have a strong mental health issues in our community. Yet, how much do we actually spend on mental health programming within the youth budget? We have a strong issue with knowing how to control our emotions, de-stressors. We only have one program in the youth millage that we use to pay for that. So I would rather see that money, you're right, on arts, but I would rather see it spent on doing long-term goals than every event. But my question was for you, and I'll tell you what it is. Earlier, you stated that you guys are the bridge to the school district and everybody else. What is the relationship that we have with the school district? Are we using any of their facilities? And if so, why are we not? The reason why I'm asking this is because previously there was a map made. The map had different locations for different things. Wouldn't it be more sensible if we used locations that we knew had insurance and that we knew was viable so that these places would be safe and it would actually develop and actually improve the relationship with the school district? I yield to you.
Well, I think you just answered the question about the relationship with the schools. So I'm not familiar with all of that, you know. I'm just here to do the best that I can. I would love to work with the schools and do more in partnership with them, and it would help because, you know, we both are very important because I always say this. When you move into a new city, there's two things you look at. You look at the school system and you look at your parks. Those are the two. And if those two are in unison working together, City of Pontiac can achieve anything they want.
Because you knew, that's the president of the school district right there, so then y'all should meet. I'm done. Thank you.
Any final discussion? Hearing no final discussion, thank you to.
That's it?
That was plenty. That was plenty. Of course, there'll be additional follow-up questions. We do recognize that the hour is growing later. Let's see how much or how little we can delve. Just for the record, we definitely will not be getting to City Council or the 50th District Court, but we may not also be making some of these others. No offense is intended, but that's how the budget cookie crumbles. Finance Department, anything Deputy Mayor or Acting Director you want us to know before we open up for questions?
Thank you, Council President. I will go over to the mic. Okay, so I will go through this just very quickly. Mission statement for finance is to provide oversight of the city's finances and develop and maintain excellent access to capital for needed uses as they arise. So again, finance department really, their main purpose is to make sure that we are not misappropriating money and that we have money as we need it. There's the current org chart, but major changes that are being suggested in the finance budget. The first is the addition of 2 accountants. This would allow us to bring more accounting functions in-house and stop relying so heavily on outsourced accounting. We currently have $400,000 in other professional services. All of that money is meant for outsourced accounting services. Additionally, during this fiscal year, we really hope to bring on a new finance director. More specifically, we hope to bring on that new finance director before the end of the current fiscal year, but we understand that it would be the bulk of the new fiscal year that finance director would really be coming up to speed with all of the issues that have to happen. Noteworthy items that fall underneath finance's purview in the budget as an overall. So the budget as an overall has a proposed deficit of approximately $2.65 million. We do believe that a large portion of that will ultimately end up being covered by grants that we have applied for. But additionally, even if there are not grants that end up covering that, we do also know that the state of Michigan is planning to increase the amount of statutory revenue sharing to communities. We currently estimate that that's probably going to be around $500,000. Yes, around $500,000. So that budget number would come down from 2.65 to 2.1. That's assuming that we don't get any of the grants. We only get the additional money that we are anticipating from the state. But because that hasn't been finalized, we haven't actually built it into the budget projection, just something that we wanted to put on your radar. We talked earlier about the money that needs to be rollover items. So there's about $6.5 million worth of line items that we are currently tracking, and we are going to bring that to you at a later date. But Council President, to your request, we will make sure that for your June meetings, we have the number as of that date, and so we can put that number into the actual budget. Proposed increase in state funding, court contribution. I also wanted to point out, again, this is falling under the finance department, just understanding how the budget is working in general. Not historically, the district court is I describe it as a wholly owned subsidiary of the city, which means that the district court, whatever it spends, ultimately, the city is responsible for covering those finances. So if the district court makes up all of that money in court fees and fines, ooh, hallelujah, great, the general fund doesn't need to do anything. But any shortfall that the district court has, the general fund is obligated to cover that. And so historically, the general fund has been sending $2.8 million to the courts. What we found in going over the budget this year is that we had been overfunding the courts. And so this year, we reduced the amount of money that we sent to the courts, and that helped us come down to this budget number or budget deficit that we're looking at by using the surplus that we had already built up in the courts. And we did not use up all of the surplus by any stretch of the imagination. So this is not a one-time accounting trick. This is going to be over multiple years that we're able to do that. Priorities inside of the finance department. Treasury is looking to implement some new online payment systems and also to make payments available outside of City Hall. So this will greatly make it easier for us to receive funds from residents and also just make it more accessible for residents to make payments at hours that work for them. Everyone is not available to come up to City Hall from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And so this is just making it able for people to pay at a time that is convenient to them. We are looking at coordinating our income tax payments through the state of Michigan. This year would be the planning year for that. It would not actually take effect until the 2025 tax year, which means that it would not actually take effect until the year 2026. That's if we actually decide to go in that direction. Income tax is the single largest source of revenue for the city of Pontiac. Last year, the grant department was the single largest source of revenue, but of course, that is not a line item that we can rely on, right? We don't know that every year we're going to be able to bring in $50 million worth of grants, but we do know that every year right now, our income tax is outpacing our state revenue sharing and is outpacing our property tax revenue. So before we make any changes in that department, we need to be crystal clear as to, how it is going to affect. Will we be able to bring in net more money by outsourcing to the state than by doing it in-house? And so this year is a planning year for that to make that determination. We also are working on implementing new compliance measures regardless as to whether or not we send it out to the state. The purchasing department, as the City Council knows, is currently undergoing a review process from an outside consultant. So we're really looking forward to implementing whatever that consultant comes up with. And then just general finance notes. With the changes that we are trying to make, we hope to have more timely reporting to City Council. And I will go back to my seat now.
I just want to summarize by the various different departments. So the treasurer, the Treasury Department, 253. The current budget is $497,000. The recommended budget is $522,000 plus, for a difference of about a 5% increase. Purchasing, this current amended budget right now is $292,000. What's proposed is $426,000, an approximately 46% increase. Keeping with those that are in finance specifically. Finance administration, the budget for this year had been $695,000. What's proposed is $1,773,000, so that's a 154% increase. Income tax administration, the current budget is $777,000 plus. What's proposed is $671,000 plus, so a decrease of about 13%. And then, although it's not explicitly identified here, Department 201 is accounting. So other professional services, the current year was $522,000. It's proposed in the budget $400,000. So my two quick questions before I turn it over is, so we're expecting accounting to come up to a little bit less. Is that just based on where we're booking the sort of contracted support or assistance, or what does that look like?
So that is in anticipation of actually hiring in-house accountants and needing to spend less money on outsourced accountants. Even though we have the $400,000 there for outsourced accounting, we really, really hope not to touch the vast majority of it.
Okay, and then for finance administration, can you highlight what are the big changes? And you can certainly allow the acting director to answer that if he's best positioned. The purchasing is pretty self-evident that obviously more staff capacity versus what we'd initially budgeted this fiscal year, so that's pretty straightforward. But is there anything you'd like to highlight in terms of the finance administration?
Yeah, the finance administration, in the case of the 206, 101, 206, there's a big increase is because of the general property tax, property insurance. We are centralizing everything under finance department, so it is increased from 30,000 to 830,000. So there's a big increase of 800,000 there. And also we are trying to add 2 additional accountants as the deputy mayor indicated.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's pretty self-evident that where you're booking now insurance property coverage for the city, it's now under finance administration. So before it would sort of be spread out between all these different departments, which isn't necessarily the most efficient way to track it.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Pro Tem, you have the floor.
Well, you took my thunder, a few
I'm sorry.
questions, but
I learned that from Melanie Rutherford.
I see. So you requested 2 additional employees. So how will this ensure more efficiency from this department?
So currently we are depending upon the consultants to do our some of the basic functions such as bank reconciliation and reconciling the current assets and liabilities and other functions. It is more appropriate to have them in-house resources so that it will be more consistency, and also we can be up to date in our accounting function, closing the books.
Okay, my follow-up question, how can we ensure that all GL numbers are up to date?
Meaning, I don't understand that.
Well, how do your department go about making sure that our GL numbers are up to date?
We are following the state chart of accounts. This, the state has specified the account numbers that we can use for the funds, departments, and the GL numbers. That's what we're using.
Okay, I'll yield to
Deputy Mayor.
the mayor has his hand up.
Council President Pro Tem, I'm going to re-ask your question to the acting director. Acting director, what the councilman is asking is historically we have not had our numbers reflective of where we actually are today. So you and I had a discussion that it was just this week that you were able to get up to date with all of the journal entries for salaries and wages.
Oh, okay.
So his question is, how can we make sure that all of these numbers are reflective of where we actually are today?
Oh, okay, I got it. Sorry, I got it. I get it now. Yeah, that's why we're seeking the 2 accountants. Currently, we're depending upon the consultants to come and help us to be, to close the books on time. And it doesn't work because it takes time to hire the consultants, and also there is no continuity between one consultant to the other firm that we hire. So it delays everything. So it is better to have in-house resources to do the day-to-day stuff.
Okay, and this is my final question, just to.
Your next question. It's okay.
So when you think about the internal process, for example, we had a lot of budget amendments made during this past cycle. So how from the internal process, how are we making sure that these amendments are being properly completed once we making these amendments?
After the, once it is passed to the council, by the council, then, I take a look at it and then we book that amendments in the books.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
To further add to the answer to your question, Council Pro Tem, currently, because of our staffing levels, those changes do not get made as timely as they should get made. There have been at least one instance that I know of where it truly did not get made in a timely standpoint, where we had to go back and say, didn't the council approve this? So again, that is why we are asking for the additional in-house staff so that we can make sure that we are getting to everything in a timely manner.
All right, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Any final questions when it relates to finance administration, accounting, income tax, purchasing, or treasury? Councilman Rutherford.
I have a question. I guess it should be for income tax. Will he be able to answer this question?
Let's see.
Okay, so let's say I wanted to be a vendor with this city, but I owed the city funding. How do we make sure that everyone who is trying to be a vendor or receive a contract is in compliance? And what does the state and the city law say about that?
Yes, sir, you have the floor, Mr. Kosowski.
Okay. Under state law, the city is not supposed to be dealing with anybody who's in debt to the city. So if they owe us money for whatever purpose, then the city is not supposed to be dealing with them. Under income tax, if I'm aware that we're dealing with the vendor and we're instituting new processes all the time, we have an income tax compliance clearance form that we're using as vendors are coming on board, and I'm checking through income tax whether or not they have either filed their returns or have paid their taxes, either withholding or corporate or partnership returns. I'm checking through my system and giving that information either they're in compliance or not in compliance, because there's information confidentiality that I cannot reveal. Just saying that they are in compliance or not in compliance with the income tax ordinance. I share that with purchasing, and purchasing then processes that information, what they do, and they will will use that in guidance of awarding a contract to a vendor.
Thank you.
Yeah, great information. All right. Any final questions on these respective departments? Thank you to purchasing, to treasury, to income tax, to finance administration for your hard work. We hope that with the budget, depending on where it finally settles, that you could have further staff, further capacity, further support, so you can continue to thrive in serving the citizens of Pontiac and the taxpayers' bottom line. All right, if the remaining council members don't object, we've had a request from the administration that due to communications department having a few staff members who have had unfortunate losses in their family, they would like us to be able to hear that tonight. And if you don't object, we can try and do that in swift order. Any objections from the remaining four? You hold the power.
Well, that's a tough request.
I know.
Did
It's
they
the
say
request we
no?
received. I don't want to make that unilateral decision.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do a 2-minute recess, so that way it doesn't impact quorum and we can regroup. But our intention is that this would be the final SWIFT department. We will have public comment, and then we will adjourn this evening. That City Clerk's Office, City Council, 50th District Court, and other revisited questions will be held at the next special meeting on the budget. So we stand at recess for the next 2 minutes. How'd it go?
Yes, the only one that is not on there is finance accounting, and that is because 100% of those funds are meant for outside accounting. The question was, what service are you actually preparing for? So this breaks down what service is actually being procured.
All right, in our final few minutes, we're ready for the Communications, Cable, and Information Technology. We have returned from recess. Without objection from administration, the department director has the floor.
Thank you. Good evening to the council, to the mayor and deputy mayor, and to the Pontiac residents that are here in person and watching. I am Paula Bridges. I'm the director of communications for the city of Pontiac, and I have been in place. This is my second budget presentation, so it's always nice being able to share out what we do for the community. Our mission is to facilitate the dissemination of information to all constituents and to manage the brand image of the city. We have communications is comprised of communications team, cable, and IT. As you can see, we have 2 individuals that are in cable. We have 3 that are in IT. Those are headed up by our cable director, Phil Brown, and our IT network engineer, Cody McPhee. And I also have under communications, our PR and social media specialists, as well as an event coordinator that just came on board in the last month. So we have quite a bit that we do on behalf of the administration. And as you can see from that organization chart, the entire team, we all have many years, somewhat, and some even have decades of experience in their area of expertise. Now, apart from IT, which deals with the network infrastructure of the city and the court's computer technology, we have diligently worked as a group towards increasing our digital communication to our residents, businesses, and partners in government. And as we don't have unlimited funding to do traditional advertising, which a lot of people know is not really doing well these days, we strive to make the most of all of our digital platforms, and that is our public access and government TV channel, our website, which recently went through extensive redesign in the last year, and also our digital platforms in social media, and our direct email communications as well to our constituents. That's been growing exponentially since last May. And as you can see, what we do strive to do is take advantage of our digital platforms through social media. We've had our reach in Facebook increase 162% over last year's increase, which was an increase of 355%. We've had new Facebook followers to our page. That's up 83%. Our Instagram visits are up 233%. And interestingly, we know that the majority of our visitors are women, ages 24 to 65, so that helps with how we go about presenting our information. We know that our messaging targets not just people in Pontiac, but individuals who visit and do business in Pontiac. That would be Waterford Township, Detroit, Auburn Hills, Rochester Hills, West Bloomfield Township, Clarkston, and so on. And our analytics tell us exactly where these messages are resonating. And because of this, we are trying to increase our reach to these visitors as well. And finally, we know that we share, what we share is important in several areas based on the response to our posts. Down in the bottom right, you'll see our organic posts, which happen with our events that occur in the city. That first post that we mentioned was the NFL draft activities. We do get numbers that tell us exactly which posts are doing the most circulation. We also have a very high response to our posts about that focus on individuals. You know, in May, we celebrated Women in History. We do Black History Month. We try to do very specific targeted messages on a regular basis, and those resonate well. And then also we have awesome response to our weekly city council meetings, and as a result of those communications, we actually interact with the public in terms of having them raise issues and questions. We have individuals that contact the city directly, and we're able to answer their questions through Meta on our Facebook platform. And as far as our goals for the next year, we are focused on increasing capacity, and that's actually our ability to meet the communication, video, and technological needs of our divisions that are now pretty much near or at capacity. As our different divisions ramp up, each division is actually putting their programs into place. So that means they are putting out new literature, they are having programs and interacting with the community, they're having town halls and public events, and a lot of that is activity that we either put together on our website or somehow send out through our IT platforms, or we're out in the community and we're having our cable teams take advantage of taking video and putting together products that will air on our platforms, or we have our PR specialists out taking photos, posting this information on the web, sending out digital messages directly from the city. And that is where you may see a growth in some of our purchasing. We're trying to purchase products that will help us to increase our reach exponentially. That could be technology, that could be the equipment that we have in cable, that could be some of the activities that we do online that we have to pay for through monthly fees and software programming. And we are focused on as well new outreach media, which is advertising. You may have seen that we had an ad that ran recently in our magazine about our supporting business. We're going to try and do more advertising in the vehicles that make sense, and that's where some of that purchasing comes from. We are continuing to translate our documents in-house in our divisions. That takes an increased amount of spending because we do it. We're also doubling back to translate documents in different languages that have been in circulation, but also as new programs are developed, new translations are needed, so we have to do that as well. This means enhancing also what we can do in our technical realm and in our social media posts so that we can be more effective in sharing out information about our town halls and our public meetings. Some of our increased purchasing when it comes to capacity is the line item that helps us bring on professionals to assist us where we are physically at capacity with our employees. We sometimes have to hire individuals temporarily from the community to put in hourly opportunities, whether it's video or photography, or it could be technologically with our live streaming. So these are opportunities that we want to do. I'm not a fan of being the land of no. We want to be able to service the needs of the administration, of the council, of the individual departments that have a need. And as all of these activities ramp up, many of the things that are requested have a tendency to be multifaceted. That means if we get a project, it takes, I'll use the example that President McGinnis used with the recent opening of the skate park. That was an all hands on deck approach where we had individuals in every aspect of the department working to put that function on. But leading up to it, our assets are at capacity. And so that's just one program where we are helping to promote and put the information out there. If each department has a request every week, there are only X amount of individuals that are working in my department. And in addition to that, as our cable director can attest, when they put together video that helps us explain some things that are going on in the community and we're able to share it out, that one video project may take hours. Well, if each department has a project that needs to be done, we're speaking about hours upon hours. Well, while our cable director is here in this meeting, the other individual in the department is down running the live stream. So in addition to working during the day, they also have to work in the evenings at all of the community meetings. And if we happen to get meetings as a last request, they have to change their schedule. And at some point, we all can't be in two places at the same time. So we look forward to reaching out into the community for those individuals who have the skills that we need. My goal also with one of the line items, which is professional services, is that we would have paid interns and individuals, part-time help that will come and help us meet the need of not only all of our divisions, our council, our courts, to meet the needs of sharing information out, because that's what we're here for. And I will leave it at that point so that we can have you ask us questions. We do have, and I really do appreciate the accommodation in Grace, because these two individuals in our that are heading up those departments have had losses, and I don't want them to even think about these types of activities next week when they should be with their families and saying goodbye to their loved ones.
Thank you.
I'll take your questions.
Thank you. So the Communications Department, it's a proposed 15% increase of about $100,000 from 659 to 759. Information Technology, Department 228, is a slight difference, about $2,000 less, so remaining in the $640,000 vicinity. And then if we go to the Cable Division or Department, which is 291, so that might be a different fund. I'll allow questions while I keep pulling that up. Councilwoman Rutherford, you have the floor.
Who controls what goes on the Facebook page? Who makes those decisions?
Well, in the last few months, prior to, I want to say, February, I would be the harbinger of what needed to go on there based on past history of the page. But we did have a scenario that caused for us to revise and review our social media policy so that we were being objective and fair in how we did things. And so now we have a social media policy that was created by our law department, and we have met with the communications subcommittee to go over those changes. And so now we have a social media policy that is in place that was created with the entire organization in mind.
So you stated earlier that you work for the council as well. Does council leadership been reached out to when we have different events? And oftentimes we can't get filming when we have events and programming. How do you justify the budget increase when sometimes when we need like events that we're having, we can oftentimes, I can say for myself, not be able to reach this department. So why would we justify giving more money when currently we can't use the department to its fullest capacity?
I am not aware of any request that has been denied that was outside of my purview. If there was a request that was denied, it would have been something that there was an element of either we did not have the staffing to cover it, or it wasn't a City of Pontiac sponsored event.
So I'm going to give an example. I'm asking for a reason. Coat Drive last year, that was a city-sponsored event, sponsored by me, sponsored by the city. And we could get no communications to actually be a part of it. So I'm just, the communications to actually be there, film it, any of that, we had to call Channel 4. So I'm just asking who decides what programs are important and who doesn't decide what programs are important.
At this point, I would have to review my notes from that time because I do believe we did have photography that took place at that time. And even if we are in a position where we have to, like I said, I don't believe in being the land of no, but if we physically don't have anyone, if it was something that happened on a weekend and we did not have staff to do it, I have shared with my staff who work very diligently, everybody on our team works more than the hours that they're paid every week. And so at some point, we have a clear understanding that we have events that happen 7 days a week. Because they're community focused, they often happen in the evening and on the weekends, and that is the reason why I have asked for an increase in funds to be able to bring in additional help, because our staff physically can't be in several places at once. And we, as I mentioned, during the week, we try to rotate, and so if there's an event we know of in advance that we have someone that can cover, we'll try and take them out of a weekday activity or a weekday to work on the weekend. But they have to be compensated for the time that they put in if, in fact, it's overtime. And some weeks we have so many different events in the evening and on the weekend that we can only ask our staff to put in so many hours. They get 48 hours of self-care, personal time, family time, and devotion on the weekend. And if they are required to put in the 40 hours that they put in plus during the week, at some point I have to justify, am I going to take them from one task during the week to do something on the weekend? And if in fact I can't make that happen, then I'm going to do my best to find out if we can bring in some temporary professional talent to cover that. And then sometimes there have been instances where we just couldn't. So my goal is to see if we can set up a plan where we can bring in additional assistance, because each department in our administration is ramping up. And we are only 2 people in communications, 2 people in cable. And at some point, you've got 1 person in cable working the first half of the day, and then the next 8 hours is the other person, because there are live stream meetings every night. And if that takes up their weekend, then I don't have anyone that I can pull to do something like that. So that may have been the answer. I can go back in my notes and find out if, in fact, I do recall that there were some photos. Now, to the extent that we hire someone, or we also ask if someone from your team can share information, we don't mind posting it on the weekend on our personal time, if you will share that with us. But if we just are understaffed, we're just understaffed.
Okay, the question's been answered. Any, Pro Tem Carrington?
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. For the IT department, have you budgeted for proper technology to prevent data breaches and cyber attacks?
That would be Cody McPhee, who is our
down.
IT engineer.
And then my question will be about cable. I'm trying to confirm, what's the trajectory of the funding that the PEG fees or that the cable fund is generating, if you want to start looking at while Mr. McPhee answers the question?
Yeah, so in case of like emergencies like ransomware attacks and those things, we do have this Veeam backup software maintenance. That covers full backups for all of our systems. In the case that something were to happen, we'd be able to restore from those. That also covers some of our cloud storage data. And then we also keep off-site backups that are stored in a secure location in case something were to happen to the systems here at City Hall.
Okay. And I don't know if I think this question is for the director. What is the status of our digital sign for City Hall? I know we had spoken about that for a while.
Digital signage on the front lawn?
Yes.
That is something that's still on my list of things to do, but I believe it has taken it's had a higher priority move forward, which is researching and determining how we can put gateway entry signs at the various points around the city. So based on a lot of the needs, all needing to happen at once, it's not, Cody has worked with me in recent months on trying to identify our options, but that has actually switched places with our need to improve our gateway entry signage. And we're at the point now where the mayor and I just recently sat down and looked at the map and looked at all of the places where these signs could be. And so at a recent subcommittee meeting, I presented options that we may consider, and so we are pursuing that. It's not so much that it's not something to happen, but I hope to make it happen before 25 is out, because that is important to discuss with our residents. There is a great consideration that has to be made for the fact that Woodward, the traffic on Woodward is going to take it's going to change. So that's another thing that we need to keep in mind, is how and where this will be placed to the best, so that we can utilize it to its best advantage.
Okay. And another question is...
Can I ask a follow-up
yes,
on that?
yes.
So these budget figures, as they stand now, don't reflect either welcome gateway signs or any digital signage at City Hall, correct?
I believe that we can absorb. I talked to the mayor about that, and he said we can determine where the funding is going to come from.
And that's okay. I just want to make sure that I'm looking at it clearly, so that it's the departmental resources you provided don't currently spell out additional funds for those specific initiatives.
To the extent that it can be covered in the printing budget, and it will cover something like that.
Okay.
I certainly I want to see that happen.
Yeah.
But we are at the development stage of what kinds of signs and how should they present themselves, that will dictate the amount of funding. So I do believe that at some point I may have to come back with a resolution to address the fact that we want to
Depending on how
have.
that project shakes out. Okay, thank
Yes.
you very much. Pro Tem.
Yes, and concerning, you're requesting, I think, communication cable, $93,315 for video equipment and $15,000 for computer equipment. Is that repairs for our equipment, or is something new technology that you're trying to purchase?
I'm going to address the cable request, and I'm going to assume that that has everything to do with us bringing in new equipment to do on-site programming like the State of the City. We have shared before that we would like to begin bringing all of those processes in-house so that if we have to do something like the State of the City, instead of contracting out with other companies, we've got the equipment to do that particular event as well as other programming in-house. And we won't be renting and paying contractors. We will actually have the equipment to make it happen with our staff.
Could you break down what that equipment is?
This gentleman can.
Okay, so some of the equipment is, right now, the audio equipment that we have here, some of the audio equipment that we're planning to move from the end right behind, right over there to right here. Enhancements to the council chamber. I know last week we talked about new chairs. You know, we had a conversation about new chairs. Also, equipment that concerns, like the director was saying, communications director was saying about live streaming. Some equipment can be used in some places. For example, a lot of times we do a lot of town halls at the Bowen Center, and it would be nice to have a secondary studio or a secondary place where we can shoot over there, where we don't have to take our equipment constantly, take it over there, set it up, and then bring it back. You know, currently and bring it back and then rehouse it back into a closet or.
Deputy Mayor, you trying to amend his answer?
Make it faster for you.
Okay.
Can you just let them know the actual equipment that you would like to purchase?
Oh, were we talking about cameras, audio, video switchers, audio-video switchers. Some of those switchers cost about $10,000 a piece. Cables, mics. Sometimes it requires lighting. Sometimes displays. It depends what is needed and what will work.
Okay, how about you just itemize in writing what's that line item what's the equipment it's gonna cover this year? And we know that, of course, you can't do everything, but what's the game plan? Further questions? Okay.
You had another question?
That next question about what's the PEG?
Okay, so I don't have the PEG fees for Comcast and AT&T are separated per quarter. So I don't have the current, which I will need, but I do have the past for 2020 and 2021. So current.
Well, I'm not too worried about those figures. So if you want to get those to me after the fact, that's okay.
Okay, yeah, but
Yep, so
it's based. I can give you a general number. The general number for Comcast is about $450,000 per year.
Okay, and that's held
And
pretty steady?
that's just Comcast.
Okay.
That is not AT&T.
Okay. So
But
if
I'll
you want to
get
get us after the fact, that's okay.
Okay.
But I just kind of want to see where the trajectory, what's happening with that. All right, further discussion on information technology, communications, and cable.
There was a question about 15,000 in computer
Sure, anything?
equipment that I think Cody might be able to address.
That was under the cable, right?
Oh, was that
Yeah. Okay.
computer activity?
Was that the? Okay, I think was that the max?
You can get that in writing.
Well, yes.
Okay,
It was
so currently with, we needed computer equipment because as we're producing more media across the board, requires more storage, it requires more. Basically. So just like right now, we are at our capacity. We are at a capacity where we're offloading computer equipment, what we're using day to day, so. that's where it goes into. Yes.
Thank you. Councilman Rutherford, you have the floor.
Just two things. Number one, thank you for the work that you do in making us look well in the community and changing the scope of what we look like.
You're welcome.
Bro, I appreciate that. Number two, I'm so sorry for both of you guys' loss, and I really, really pray that you guys find peace in this moment. My only question is this. Do you guys have enough money in y'all budget to be successful, meaning balancing how the council communications as well as the administration? Because I want to make sure that we're being treated equally. So I guess that's a question for the director.
Thank you so much. I was being conservative in my request for other professional services simply because you may have noticed that we've been doing a lot more video. And we've been sharing a lot of that information and storytelling. Storytelling is so important about all that we do. And so I do not believe in being the land of no. We have so much information that we want to share. And I hate to have to say we have no one to do it. We don't have the ability. So in our request for professional service funding, this allows us not only to tap into other talent in the community, bring them in. I see it as a grooming opportunity if we're bringing in interns and teaching them the skills that we need to assist the city. We have so many things that we want to share. We have talented people that can make it happen in cable and IT and our social media and the events. We want to grow the events. So all of this comes together in telling Pontiac's story. And as often as we can physically be somewhere we want to be there, we want to make sure we have the technology. As he was saying, the equipment purchases are because we have so much information, the technology is changing. It can't even keep up with itself. So we could use more, but what we have asked for is what we believe is a good start.
So the only reason why I asked that is because of the school. I always forget Specs Howard. Specs Howards always have an assignment, I know, because I have people that went there that they have to come do internships. So that would be a great pool for you guys to dig from. Also, OCC has a communication department that you guys want to dig from. And also, the high school has a program that you might want to dig from that gives the students an opportunity. I used to do that, Your Vision, Your Voice opportunities for the students to be a part of. So just to offset that so the kids can learn how to work in that field, because media especially is very important. So I just was just asking, did y'all have enough tools to do that?
It's a start, but we want to continue growing because at this stage we want to start doing more video programming, which is like 20 to 30-minute programs on city features, city programs, city events, city activities, city initiatives, and we do need more bodies and equipment to do that. We want to hopefully start in the next few months podcasting. And so when Phil says, yes, we need new equipment, it's to allow us to do that. And when the new center is built, we've already had discussions about maybe having a studio there that will serve as not only a place where we can put our stories together, but the community can come in and they can put some of their stories together, and it can also be a location for training the youth that are in the Youth Rec program, as well as the seniors that will probably also have an opportunity to come through. We want to make this a symbiotic engagement of telling our stories, but also bringing the community together to help tell their stories, because with Pontiac being the heart of Oakland County, we need their information to grow and grow our messaging. So we want to do everything we can to receive the information and also put it out.
All right, thank you.
All right, hearing no final questions, that concludes the communications, cable, and information technology portion. We now are at public comment. Are there any requests tonight, Pro Tem?
Yes, Mr. Chris Northcross.
Good evening. I have a question. This concerns the monitoring of sound around M1 Concourse. The Code Enforcement Department, I believe, has been tasked with that, has been given that task to monitor M1 sound, and if it's found to be outside of our zoning requirements, to actually write tickets. As I was looking through the budget, I was looking at, I may be looking at this wrong, I was looking at Budget Department 733, and I saw that it had a 100% decrease. Not getting into the weeds of this decrease or that decrease, I just want to make sure that we can do an adequate measurement and control and if need be, enforcement of M1 concourse, and that money is set aside in the budget. That may even require that we have to go out and get a sound specialist to set us up to be able to measure that sound in such a way that it holds up in both district court and any appeals court that he may take us to. So thank you. I just bring that up. 733 is the budget number, and I think I saw a 100% decrease for funding in that budget.
Bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. Dr. Deidre Waterman.
I'm here, Mr. Norcross, and I am aware of that problem that they have with M1 noise pollution. And I'm saying, hey, look, no, that shouldn't go in the budget. There are ways in which we could make the M1 interested in doing those sound studies. That shouldn't be something the taxpayers have to pay. But at any rate, I will have that further conversation with Norcrosses about the strategies for doing it that way. But I've been hours late, so I'm not going to prolong it. But I'm just, as I've been listening, I always listen for certain key points. And these are not so much questions as the fact that as I've been listening, I've been musing about what were the answers to these. So I'm just sharing that with you because I know we have another budget hearing, and I will be listening for the answers because I didn't hear them so far. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You did promise me the line itemization of certain revenue topics where we need to look at those. So I'm going to give you the ones I'm looking for, particularly the grants, because you can't tell from the big numbers what they actually are and where they're coming from. There's one particularly I'm looking for, and that's the one from Gary Peters. Senator Gary Peters that came in that was applied for as appropriation. That was supposed to be used for remediation of the amphitheater, which, we still have the possibility of using that now as we're doing the project with Oakland County. But that can be salvaged. That's $21 million. That is in good shape, and it can be salvaged. So I know that $1 million from Gary Peters was supposed to be used for that. I'm just wondering where that is right now, in addition to the insurance funds that were collected. But I'm just musing also the fact that when I left office, there was $25 million surplus that was left to the city. And we had so much built up because of the fact that the last 2 years was a pandemic. So we weren't spending all the money that was coming in. We were kind of just keeping people healthy and providing services. But also, they were, a lot of revenue had started to come in because we brought in all the economic development. So as I look now, and once again, I'm still looking at the figures, but I see now you're going to end this year with $2 million in the red. So are you telling me that in 3 years' time, we've gone from $2 million up here, $25 million up here, to $2 million down here? How is that sustainable? So I'm going to be looking for those answers. The other thing, I started out with 28 employees in the city, and I see now that with the latest organizational tracks, you now have about 126, but you're asking for 7 or 8 more. And I'm seeing particularly how many salaries have mushroomed above the $100,000 level. And that is from 3 when I started. So I'm just asking, how's that sustainable? And I'll be looking for those answers.
That concludes public comments.
All right. Thank you all for your participation and attendance this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Councilman Parker. Roll call. Rutherford. Carrington.
Yes.
Parker. Yes. McGinnis is yes. That motion carries. We stand adjourned at 7:47 p.m.